Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. It's Thursday morning. This is Thursday Morning Live. Glad that you are here today. Hope you are settling in here this month. This is the last month of the year. I keep talking to people about, hey, are you going to finish strong? Are you staying in the game right now? Continuing to move forward. I know that we have our team has a couple of things going on that we really can't take our foot off the gas. And I want to just ask you, is that how you're looking at your business right now, going into the end of the year? The other thing I just want to share with you this morning is, and I want you to save the date for this. So write this down, December 28th. December 28th at 2:30 Central Standard Time, I'm going to be releasing my new 2024 goal setting and planning guide. And I'm going to be having an event. We're going to talk about goal setting and mindset. We're going to talk about how to strategically set ourselves up for the new year. This is that time of year to be planning and thinking through what you want to accomplish next year and in the coming months, and how you're going to attack that, how you're going to put a business plan together. I use a business plan strategy that's a 1-3-5. And when you see how this works and the power behind that, it will really elevate you and your business and what you're going to do next year. So I want you to save that date right now. We'll be sending a link out here in the next couple of days for you to start to register for this. You're going to be able to get my 2024 planning guide that's going to walk you through a lot of these systems that we're going to talk about. And then I'm also going to do a bonus session at the end, how to future pace yourself and put yourself in a different place, in a different space where you actually want to be. Well, thanks for being here this morning. If you're new to the show, we're here every Thursday morning at 8:30. You might be seeing us on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please smash the subscribe button and follow us. We're always bringing out good content, good guests with a high level of energy, as well as information for you. If you're on Facebook, follow us join our Facebook community at Facebook or Multifamily Unplugged, where we are always sharing a lot of networking tips and techniques, some systems, some new events that we have coming up. We've been really doing this webinar series lately and having a lot of talk around tax planning and strategies, which brings me to this morning. My guest this morning is Scott Royal Smith. Scott's with Royal Legal Solutions out of Austin, Texas. We're going to talk about asset protection and some tax planning strategies this morning. So if you're on social media, make sure you like us, copy this and send it to somebody else who needs to see this, because I know the information we cover this morning will be helpful for you. Hey, Scott, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
How are you?
Good. Thanks, man.
Good to meet you, that's for sure.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I always love doing these lives and meeting with people for the first time and getting to know people and seeing what their business is about. So, hey, Scott, whenever I start these shows, the first question I always ask my guests is, in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think probably the best word for me is free.
Free. Wow, that's interesting. How do you, why do you come up with the word free?
Freedom is a state of mind.
Mm.
It's a state of mind that says that there's nothing that I actually have to do, that everything that I do and everything I experience comes from a place of choice.
That's awesome. I probably have 1,000 podcasts I've done in the last 3 years, a couple different shows, and I ask that question of all my guests, and I know for a fact that that's a word nobody's ever come up with. So I'm going to love that. I'll always say I'm going to write a book here one of these days on just that question alone. So I think that that's a great philosophy to have, and I hope people embrace that this morning a little bit. But hey, why don't you talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, your background, how you got into asset protection?
Yeah. So my name is Scott Royal Smith. Professionally, I'm an attorney. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an executive teams coach, personal coach. I do a lot of different things in the world. My company, Royal Legal Solutions, I started many years ago, over 10 years ago, was the child of my own desire of wanting to become financially free through real estate investing, which I started when I was in law school. I built a transmission and auto repair business and bought a commercial building for back taxes, and then was able to flip those businesses and buildings to graduate from law school without debt. Worked as a litigation attorney suing insurance companies while building a real estate portfolio so I could go climb Mount Kilimanjaro and travel around the world, do all the things that they tell us that we're supposed to do when we have all this passive income. What I quickly find out was that most of what everybody told me was a lie.
Hmm.
It was a lie because they said, well, all you need is just have a good umbrella policy in place and all your assets be protected. Well, my friend who told me that lost over $3 million from a single lawsuit. Another person told me, said, well, you just get a bunch of single family homes and then just keep those for forever and hire a property manager and it'll be totally passive. Well, that's not true because I still ended up having to buy new assets when I ran out of depreciation for my taxes. And then I still had to manage the property manager. What I quickly started to realize is that to actually get free, more than financially free, to get your time back, you actually had to start building teams, systems, and processes. So I ended up spending a few years building that for myself. And Royal Legal Solutions is just the extension of people asking me to help build for them what I build myself, to essentially become the CEO of your own wealth building company in 6 weeks instead of taking 6 years.
Awesome. I can see where the word free comes from. Sounds like you've experienced some people have some uh, tough situations with lawsuits and that along the way. It can't be easy to be litigate against an insurance company either.
No, insurance companies are notorious difficult. My clients now, we handle about a lawsuit a month that comes up.
Mm.
Lawsuits are typically the worst thing that can ever happen to you. It's like up there with like divorce. It's where everything in your life comes to a screeching halt. So the opportunity though is if you use the asset protection laws and LLCs and trust correctly, you never have to worry about lawsuits again. If you use correct tax strategy in place and appropriate tax shelters and deductions, you shouldn't be paying 15, 20, 25, 30% taxes. You should be paying somewhere between 0 to 10 per year. If you have proper estate planning in place, you know that the assets are going to pass privately to your family without being exposed and caught up in a court system called probate. It's all those just little things that if you put them together correctly and they all work together correctly, you can really manage your life in a very highly professional way in just a couple hours a quarter. Like less than 10 hours a year is what it should take to manage wealth.
Hmm. Interesting. Hey, this seems to be the topic lately. I've done a couple of webinars over the last few weeks with one of my partners, and we've been talking about tax planning and strategies. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What are some of the tools that you like to use for, tax planning strategies for, helping people keep more of their disposable income?
Yeah. So for anybody making over, let's say, $150,000 a year in household income and paying more than $20,000 in tax, there's just a few key considerations to walk through. The first is to be able to maximize whatever deductions that you have, right? And the easiest ways to do that is typically taking income that you have and saying, well, I have home office deductions, my cars are inside of like the business name, and if I have cash coming in, maybe I'll pay my kids, right?
Hmm.
Because they're going to be at a lower tax bracket. And then you'll have some other deductions like how to write off your vacations and some other things there. So that's step one. Step two is going to be your appropriate tax shelters. Everybody knows about like IRAs and solo 401ks. But the problem with these things is they lock up all your money until retirement. A much better solution than these is what's called a private foundation. In a private foundation, you can protect up to 30% of your income from tax. And so it's really like a super IRA. And with that too is that you can take distributions out of your private foundation as like an employee of the foundation. So it's actually liquid, unlike an IRA or a 401k. So you can have this tax shelter that also serves as an investment shelter for high cash flowing investments that don't have big tax benefits. So typically this for me, this is like my non-real estate investments. This is my like algorithmic trading stuff that I do, or things that I know they're just going to be big cash, but they don't actually have any depreciation benefits like my real estate. All that goes in my private foundation. And then lastly, what you want to do is to align your investments to be able to help you with tax. So inside of your portfolio, a proper portfolio strategy should be a spreadsheet. You say, as I need this much money and this type of investment, that's going to give me this kind of cash flow, net worth, and tax benefits. With professional guidance, you should be able to answer the question is, what is the exact investment that I'm looking for next? And exactly how much money do I need to place in that investment to reach my goals? So that means it's this type of investment. I'm going to place $50,000. It's going to pay me X percentage in cash flow, X percentage in net worth, and X percentage in depreciation benefits. And your portfolio then is leveraged not just for cash flow and net worth. It also is telling you exactly how much money you need in depreciation benefits to pay $0 in taxes. And so that's how that's how simple it really is. It's just your deductions, your tax shelters, and the types of investments, and that's how you can get to $0 in taxes.
So Scott, that's really interesting. So in order to open or put together a private foundation, do you need a certain amount of money to
No,
open that with? You don't. Okay.
no, any amount of money.
And how does that compare to a trust? I've had a couple of trust attorneys on this past year. How does that compare to a trust?
Yeah, so there's things like deferred sales trusts that you can do. The problem with deferred sales trusts is that they typically have really it's pretty significant startup fees, right? My understanding from the companies that we partner with on that, they typically charge about $20,000 a year, and then take a percentage, a pretty hefty percentage of whatever's in the trust is like a management fee of the trust as your annual, right? So that's fine. You also, with a deferred sales trust or these other type of trust entities that are for tax leverage purposes like that, you also don't get to control the investments that are in the trust. The trustee has to control all the investments that are there. So you get to say, hey, these are the objective guidelines that I'd like to make, but I don't actually get to control any of the money that's in there. The trustee is going to place that according to whatever the guidelines are, right? I personally, I have a pretty expensive deal network from doing this over the last 12 years, right? I'm a professional investor first, an attorney and CEO second. So what I like to do is I like to use the private foundation, because the private foundation, it says, great, if I made $200,000 this year, I can take $60,000 and put it in my foundation. Now that 60K isn't taxed. And then I'll go invest that money into some type of syndication or some type of deal, something where I know that it's going to be an investment that's typically going to return for me somewhere between 25 to 35%. That's what I try to target with my personal deals that are from my network of things that I do. And then I can control it more and I can take distributions out. Another problem with trusts, why I don't like them, is I can't control how much money I get out. I have to I can only maybe modify that like once a year or once every 2 years. With a private foundation, I can take money out as a director, as my director, quote unquote, salary at any time, and pretty much almost any reasonable amount, right? That's there. So it's just much more flexible, much more controllable. It only costs maybe $6,000 or so to create, right? And very minimal to be able to maintain, right? Maybe $1,000 to $2,000 a year. So it's if you're gonna have like a $30 million sale of your company, okay, maybe a deferred sales trust could be right for you. Crunch the numbers and find out. But for all of us, just common folk out here, a private foundation is much, much better.
So with a private foundation, talk about the tax advantages. So it sounds like different from a self-directed IRA or a qualified fund, you can take the cash flow along the way.
Yeah. So the issue is that you can be a director of your private foundation, and then as a director, you're able to receive compensation for your work as a director of the foundation, right? And so that wage can be anything that's reasonable. So typically, what people are doing is they say, "Well, I'm going to, let's say I make $200,000 a year, and I want to protect 60,000 from taxes. That's 30%, which is the max you can protect is 30%." That $60,000 gets invested in a private foundation. And typically the plan is we just really want to grow this tax free, right? And we want to grow it inside of the foundation, and just like an IRA, right? But what happens if I have some type of life event? I need cash, right? Well, I can't go to my IRA or 401k, right? But with this, I can, right? And I don't pay any penalties. it just becomes taxable to me at the point at which that I take it out as a director's wage. So this is a great retirement strategy. It's also much more liquid and easy for you during your life in case something happens. It's much more flexible. Yeah.
Interesting. Hey, how does it work? So, how would a foundation, a private foundation work? Say somebody was doing a 1031 out of a real estate deal, and they were rolling. They wanted to try and roll their money into another real estate deal on a 1031 exchange. Is this a way to alleviate that?
So on a 1031 exchange, what you're doing is you're essentially not paying tax because you're going to be investing inside of a bigger property, right? Or
Right.
in some other deal, right? So either way, hypothetically, from an immediate tax consequence, it's exactly the same. If I do the 1031, I'm not paying tax. If I have enough total income that whatever amount of money I'm liquidating here from the underlying exchange, I can all place that all into the private foundation. I'm also not paying tax, right? So from that perspective, it doesn't. I don't see any difference.
So let's say I had an investor who wanted to invest in one of my syndication deals, and I wasn't set up as a syndicator, as the operator, to take 1031 money. Is this a way
Right.
to help that 1031 investor invest in my deal
Yeah.
without and still be able to defer those taxes or not pay taxes?
Yeah. So what I would probably do is is what can be the case is that typically it can be like a solo 401k and a private foundation. So like remember a private foundation is 30% of total income. A solo 401k is like 60-ish thousand total, right?
Yeah.
So typically what you can do is say, well, let me max out what I can put into my private foundation. And then if I have extra leftover money, then I can put it into my solo 401k and my solo 401k, and then I'll invest from like two different streams if I have to do something like that. But a lot of times what I find is that, you know, okay, so I have the money and then I'm pushing the foundation and then I'm also pushing money into the deals, but that deal's probably kicking me off extra depreciation. And as you can see, and I bet any of the listeners and probably you, Mike, is like, oh my God, head's like spinning on like how
Yeah,
many
my
options there.
my head's spinning right now,
Yeah.
Scott. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's why we use spreadsheets, right? That's why what we call modeling. So we build the spreadsheets and the templates to be able to strategically plan, okay, what's happening with like liquidity, right? Great. So we became liquid because we sold this property. What are our options? Private foundation, still a 401k, investments that give us depreciation, et cetera. What do we need to do for how much money into each? And then like the numbers tell us exactly what to do because of what the spreadsheet is organized to be able to tell us. So
Sure.
that's how everybody should be investing, in my opinion, because once you build that for the first time and with a team, especially with a high level professional team, life just becomes so much easier and wealth increases so much faster.
So, Scott, I've been in this business 30 years and haven't heard about this before. How did you discover this? How did this come about? You know, uh, what's the history of this private foundation?
Oh, private foundations have been around for like super long time, right? It's just typically what's different now is that I've spent, you know, 12 years studying what are all the wealthiest people doing and then being able to say, well, how can I bring that to the common person, the average real estate investor? How can I do it for myself? And then how can I help other people do it? The reason that you haven't heard about it is just because it hasn't been part of the playbook of what people that helped average, investors to be able to do. And that's really what the nexus of my whole company is, Mike. It's how do you take the highest level professional guidance and then be able to fractionalize it, meaning like the appropriate amount for the average investor, because you can't afford CPAs, CFOs, attorneys, paralegals, and all these people to be on your personal staff all of the time. So that's what Royal Legal Solutions does. And then when you become a client, we give you here's the systems and the processes of everything that needs to happen for your setup inside of the first 6 weeks, for your quarterly meetings, for your access to the team when you need to be able to schedule time with your attorneys and whatnot. And then in this way, every single person can have the very best guidance with the very best team members and the very best systems and processes in a way that they can afford.
Interesting. How now? I know you're an attorney. Do you have anybody on your staff or on your team that's an accountant that can help walk people through what the model looks like if they were to open up a private foundation with you?
Of course, yeah. So we have number of attorneys, paralegals, CPAs, MBAs, CFOs, all on staff. Everything that we do is all in house. We don't farm anything out to anybody, and we're a team of about 30.
Interesting. So talk about the tax piece. So if I open a private foundation, you said it's tax deferred, but in a typical, I do multifamily syndications. And so in a typical syndication, I try to set up three things, right? I try to set up cash flow, long-term wealth building, and then try to help my people with tax planning strategies, whether that be through depreciation or some asset protection, things like that. How does the tax piece work? So if I'm coming out of a syndication, okay, and I'm going to go into another one. There's that capital gains and the clawback from depreciation and things like that. If I was to go into a private foundation at that point, how does that help me with my tax consequence?
So your tax vehicle is going to be really dependent on the investment, right? So if we make a real estate investment, like say in your syndication, Mike, with my money that's inside of my private foundation, well, I get the cash flow and net worth, but my depreciation is actually locked up in the foundation. So typically what I'm advising people is say, listen, is that you actually need multiple buckets or vehicles to be able to make different kinds of investments. So you're likely making money inside of like a business right now, right? Or somebody is. And you say, well, great. Well, you're probably better off making the investment with Mike inside of your personal asset holding company, like your Series LLC or your Delaware Statutory Trust or your LLC, whatever it is, the entity that holds all of your assets, because you shouldn't be owning assets in your personal name. Great. What'll happen there is that all the depreciation from Mike's investments will help lower the taxes that you personally would have to pay. Okay, so where do I want to place money in my private foundation? My private foundation investments are typically going to be investments that I'm going to be growing over time that aren't going to have depreciation benefits. So if I like having a portion of my portfolio in stocks, that'll go there. I personally love algorithmic trading. It pays me about 3% a month. And it takes me about 10 minutes a week to be able to do. I think algo trading is amazing right now for just pure cash flow, but it has high tax consequences. So great, I'm going to push that into my private foundation. And you can see like there's a split, right? Depending upon the investment and depending upon the tax objective. It could be we want to push this into a private foundation. It could be we want to take that into your personal name. It could be we want to put that inside of, some type of, mix between the two, right? So there is no like magic bullet to say like,
Okay.
oh, this is the way that it should work every single time. Besides the fact that it's certain investments like real estate are almost always better to do inside of your asset holding company and tied to your personal name. Whereas other things that are just pure cash flowing, flipping properties, algorithmic trading, high cash flow, but no depreciation benefits should be in some type of tax protected shelter.
Well, that's interesting. So obviously it's a case by case situation. So if I refer one of my investors over to you, you're gonna do an evaluation with them, talk to them about their personal situation, and then kind of give them some guidance and direction around that.
Yeah. So the way that we like to work with people is typically not off of just like, here's like a one-off strategy. We have some people that are like, hey, I just need an LLC or an estate plan. That's great. We're happy to set those up. The way that we prefer to work with people is on a holistic build. We say, great, we can make you the CEO of your own wealth building company. We can do it all inside of 6 weeks. And then we're going to train you about how to use the systems, the processes, and the tools to actually build wealth. So you don't have to spend 6 years learning how to do all of this. We can get it all done now. And then what we find is that working with us, by the time we save people money on taxes and streamline these pieces and get their portfolio working, is typically about a 50% return on investment. And that has a lot to do with just the fact that everybody's overpaying on taxes, right? And because they're overpaying so much on taxes, so I like to say that we're the best investment you can make. And it's like a different take from somebody who does like taxes and legal and those things, because it's just about efficiency.
So I love that you are really trying to help people on the tax side, right? Alleviate some of the tax burdens that they have. What about the asset protection side? Now, what are you, what are you protected from? How easy is it for somebody to pierce the veil of this? Are they able to get to those assets or find out who you are?
Yeah. So first thing that we always emphasize is there's two things. There's anonymity, and then there's compartmentalization. So you shouldn't know anything anymore. You guys should have an asset holding company that owns everything. So now that you don't have anything in your personal name, because you're risky, like you're sending emails to people, you're driving a car, you're doing a lot of stuff that can trigger lawsuits. So we want to put it into a company that's not doing anything. We call it an asset holding company. Inside of that asset holding company, we want the company to be anonymous. So there's ways to do that, either forming that parent company in Wyoming or using trust structures. And then we want to compartmentalize every asset. So that way, if somebody sues like one of your properties, they can't get to any of your other properties. And you can do that by creating multiple LLCs or using like even more efficient as a series LLC, where you can create one parent company and an infinite number of child series for free. It literally turns into an infinitely scalable company for free. And in this way, you have the best possible protection, especially if you form it in states that have charging order protection, which is how you prevent people from piercing the veil or otherwise being able to find workarounds to be able to get into your entity structure. The effect of this is very strong. I had, there's a client of mine, we defend about one of these a month for lawsuits coming in. And I had a client of mine that ended up flipping a property, and there was some dispute about like what plumbing in the property had been replaced for some emails that went back and forth. And when the buyer was out of town, there was a leak, and it caused about $75,000 in damage on the property. So of course the buyer is really mad. Says, cool, wants to sue my client because they said, hey, you lied to me about the plumbing being replaced. This plumbing actually wasn't replaced. He said, well, that's not actually what I meant in the email, yada, 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 right? So at the end of the day, what ended up happening is that the structure itself, because the asset was compartmentalized, it only had that asset. We had sold that asset. We had distributed all the cash out of that child series of her series LLC. When I talked to the opposing counsel's attorney, I was like, listen, man, you don't got much. All of the communications that she made that through an operating company, which is essentially a shell company. Doesn't own anything. It's just her front face to the world to be able to transact all of her business and do all of her communications. The company you bought it from, her asset holding company, she was holding that asset inside of a child series of a series LLC at this point. That child series doesn't own anything anymore. Even if you can spend $50,000 and win this lawsuit, there won't be anything there for you to recover. And that's actually how you win lawsuits before they start, is because you can never win on the facts, right? That's going to go to a jury of 12 random people off the street, right? What you do is you win on the structure. And if you get the structure right, it tilts the leverage in your favor. And that's how you're able to stop lawsuits before they ever start.
Interesting. I think it was in Donald Trump's book years ago, The Art of the Deal, where he made the comment that if you haven't been sued, you're really not in business. I think lawsuits are things that happen for people today. And, how do you, obviously this is a vehicle that will help you protect yourself from things like that, because issues could come up. And I think people are looking for a way to alleviate that pain early on if they can.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people think it's because they're honest, they won't get sued. And then what they don't understand is that in legal proceedings, everybody lies. And the reason they're suing you is not because they really want to sue you. It's because they got hurt and they want somebody else to take care of it for them. They want somebody else to pay their $75,000 in damages to their property. Right. They don't want to pay it. And so what they do is, it's like kind of like they lie about it, and so it's really the only real protection you can have in this life is the one that you control. Being honest is never a defense. And it doesn't really seem, I always say you should be honest. If you feel like you should pay somebody money because you feel like that's the right thing to do, great. Then you should do that. right? Pay them money. But the thing is don't put yourself in a position where our court system is going to force you to do something, right? It's very different if you choose to be able to give out of generosity and compassion versus saying that, like, well, now I'm actually under threat of somebody else, where a single lawsuit, especially if I own all the assets in my personal name, can have one lawsuit and completely wipes me out. And that's what happens in this country. That's why you have people filing bankruptcy. And so don't hit the reset button. The only way to make sure you don't hit the reset button is have good insurance and good asset protection.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thanks for being here this morning. I appreciate you and your knowledge. Definitely a different insight from other things that we've talked about or that a lot of people even know about. So I appreciate that. How do people get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you and find out more?
Yeah, best thing to do is go to royallegalsolutions.com. If you want to learn about how to become the CEO of your own wealth building company, I show you exactly what you need to do instead of a 30-minute video there. And there's also a scheduling link if you want to meet with one of my team to see how we can help build that for you. So we'll get the video will show you exactly the path forward. And the if you want us to help you build that, that's a great time to connect with the team. If you need to learn more about it, about how some of these things work that we talked about here today, the best thing to do is click the link in the top right-hand corner of the webpage called The Vault. And that takes you into a resource that has 11 ebooks, hundreds of hours of videos, and all the free training. It's everything I use to train my staff. I make it all available to everybody. So there's no secrets. There's nothing hidden behind the curtain. It's all available for you if you really want to nerd out on it. And I would say for everybody that there's no excuse not to take action, because I've made it free to learn. So
That's awesome.
It's all right there.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Hey, everybody, go check out Scott's website, go to the vault and do some research. I think that this is a great opportunity for you, especially this time of year, to be planning for your future and those for your assets, to protect those, pay less in taxes, and put more money in your pocket on an annual basis. Scott, again, thanks for being here. I hope you have a great holiday season coming up. And I will look forward to connecting with you again.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.